All right, Grasshoppers, she is back.
Hey, Grasshoppers.
Man, everybody wants Allie on the show all the time. And very funny last night, too. She sent me a picture of a big bottle of sake that she was diving into. So we'll see how you feel today.
Well, I went for a run, so I think I purged that pretty well. And there were no weird incidents last night other than, the boys and I goofing off. I was wondering if you ever did this with your boys. Is tuck-in time, like when they were younger, obviously, was it a nice, peaceful tuck-in time, or is it like a wrestling match like it is in our house?
We tried to not have it be a wrestling match because they never go to sleep if it was, but yeah, it took a little while.
Everybody goes to sleep happy here and wound up. It's just like my husband's trying to wind down, and upstairs it's I actually have our house labeled on the map as gorilla habitat because there's always it's totally my fault, but I like horseplay and it always comes out at bedtime.
Correct.
Anyway,
well, we used to, when my boys were small too, we had a motorhome, so we used to go camping all the time and everything. And that was a blast, but they'd be so tired from being outside all day, they'd crash in the motorhome. But we'd always get the fire going outside. I'd be drinking a beer and they're having marshmallows and all that good stuff.
I love fire pit time and watching the stars and listening to the animals. Except there was one time I was camping in Japan with a group of astronomers. That's a long story, but I was camping there and there were signs up about wild pigs. Shishi. And I noticed that there was a fence around like the campground. I'm like, well, that's good, but it's not a very tall fence or anything. And I know wild pigs, so I don't really know. So I went to sleep, and Sam's asleep in the car. The older boy's asleep in the car because he really was protesting against camping. I thought when you raise your kids to love the outdoors when they're young, that lasts, their whole life. Not necessarily. They go through phases. So his bargain was he sleeps in the car, I sleep in the tent with Ben. So I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear like snorting and snuffling outside the tent. Like in the middle of the night. And you know how you have those dreams where you want to yell and you think you're yelling? Well, I woke myself up. I was totally not yelling. I made this crazy sound like a sheep. I went, bah! And that's what woke myself up.
Was there something outside your tent?
Yes. Yes, there was a small wild pig outside the tent, but I think like the sound of a sheep was not what the pig expected, and so it ran off. Like, why couldn't I scream? Why could I not scream?
You should do it. Like we should do a whole half hour on that theory that why you would decide to do a sheep.
Why did sheep come out? Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, you know what I forget to do all the time too is so you're an epidemiologist. What's the name of your company? Do you have a?
Yeah, Artemis Biomedical Communications, but it's to make it easy. I came up with this on a marathon after Sam was born. I decided it should be easy to say. So it's abcmedicalwriting.com.
Okay. So people want to get a hold of you, they can get a hold of you. And again, you do writing. So companies hire you to do writing, all medical stuff?
Well, actually what I've been doing for 15 years is supporting academic faculty. So researchers in universities who are conducting research in healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and also in the field of education, which I really love. I really love education policy and health policy. So right now, this weekend, I've been actually working with some data, relearning generalized estimating equations. Super fun. And I really love it. I love it. Yeah, it's really neat, to think about an outcome. Like, so you do a baseline survey and then you do a survey after a program, and you want to figure out, did your educational program make a difference?
Right.
And it may or it may not demonstrate that on a survey, but you also may want to consider which group of people in your class did it make the most difference for. And that's what we're doing with the generalized estimating equations, is controlling for length of time teaching. It's really neat. I am so lucky.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's different kind of fun. It's not like you're going out bowling or something like that. It's a different kind of fun, right?
I also have fun bowling. I've managed to wipe out bowling and slide down the lane myself along with the ball.
Here's one of my claims to fame. So my last year, I think probably my junior year in college, so Northern Michigan University, I was not doing too well in school. As a little too much attention being paid to my hockey career. And I had to drop a class. So I had to take 4 1-credit classes in the second half of the semester. So it must have been my senior year because we were the #1 ranked hockey team at the time in the country.
Wow.
I was
in Canada, right?
Pardon me?
In Canada?
No, this is at Northern Michigan University. Way up in the southern coast of Michigan.
Okay, college. Okay.
Yeah. So my 4 classes that I took were bowling, racquetball, phys ed, and here's the topper. Now remember, #1 ranked team in the country. I'm the captain. The other class was beginning skating, and the the coach was the instructor, and he saw that I'd signed up. He says, Tom, please don't show up, because it's really just basically showing up all the time. So if I showed up and then I didn't show up all the time, everybody'd be like, well, he gets an A and we don't. So yeah, really proud of that. That was great usage of my scholarship money right there.
Yeah.
I am a good bowler now. I'm a good bowler.
Are you? That doesn't surprise me. Yeah. What about golfing? That seems like it would be kind of a natural swing too.
It's funny. You know what? Everybody says that, and most hockey players are. I am terrible. Part of it is I just have no patience whatsoever. I can't do it. Yeah. I do a lot of charity events. I ride around the cart and I make fun of other people and everything.
Right, and cause mischief, I'm sure. Yeah. That's your specialty.
Yeah. Yes. The best one is, especially after the guys have had a few beers, you undo the strap on the back of the cart where it holds the bag on. So when they go to take off, the bag goes flying off. I find that quite humorous, but not many other people do. But
well, who picks up the bag? You, while you're laughing?
No, I'm gone by then. I'm taking off. I'm running.
That's so bad. Well, it's interesting that you bring up education, because I am going to do something this week, and I'm going to invite any grasshoppers who have kids who they're kind of like, I'm targeting specifically high schoolers, and specifically those who have struggling GPAs right now. It is spring of junior and senior year. And so for those kids in their junior and senior year, they're thinking about college next year, or they've already been accepted and they have, a slide. So anybody who wants to join me, just send a note, go to my website, abcmedicalwriting.com, and send me personally a note, and I will give you a link to a study hall that I'm going to offer this Thursday for students who need some help writing an English essay, or a lot of AP classes have document-based questions, DBQs, and short answers and things like that. I'm going to do a support 1 hour study hall for anybody who is just really doesn't like it, not engaged. They don't feel like doing their assignment. The assignment is missing. They don't know how they're going to get it done. I am here. I want to help you.
Nice.
From what I understand, I really want to help the parents, because I am 100% in the middle of that right now, dealing with trying to engage kids in school. And this virtual hybrid environment can be difficult for some kids to really find value. So I want to just be like that extra friendly face to wrap around and support the family.
That's fantastic. You know what I'll do? I'll post that this is on my Facebook profile. I'll post it. ABC, say it again one more time. ABC?
Yeah, ABC Medical Writing.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll post that. I guess you can see that too. All right. So we're going to have a little bit of an itch. See, now I have learned to learn, as we discussed before, and I've learned a lot during the pandemic about my diet, about fasting and all that. But now we're going to touch on a subject today that actually we touched on yesterday with a good friend of mine. We didn't get into detail about it, but the glycemic index. So first of all, explain what's glycemic.
Well, my friend Amy, who I really hope I can get to not be too shy to come on your show and explain it, would do a far better job. So disclaimer first, I am just an MPH, master's degree epidemiologist. I'm not a registered dietitian. But I read the same article I sent to you this morning, and I have some general awareness of what glycemic index is. So basically, carbs are converted into sugar at some point down the road through metabolism in your body. And the glycemic index is just what proportion of that gram of carbohydrate is metabolized into sugar, how much it looks just like sugar. I'm probably doing a very bad job of explaining that. But really, you want to stay away from high glycemic index foods and go more towards low glycemic index foods, like under 50 is what I thought. And so that number is 6%.
The high glycemic foods then will turn more of the carbs into sugar. And the sugar then is, again, you'll get that sugar rush, but then you get the crash, right? So that's
I believe that,
that's a short-term effect. It also creates more fat in your body too, correct?
Well, any excess of calories ends up going to fat, but I do believe that if you are metabolizing sugar very quickly and you have an overload of sugar in your bloodstream, I do think that it gets kind of expedited straight to fat or stored in the liver versus being stored as glycogen in your muscles, which is what you want to do. So you want to get the right balance. You want to only supply your body with what it really needs.
Right.
And I think that the number, the glycemic index, is actually a rate. It's a percent. So it's like how quickly you metabolize that carb into sugar. And like you just said, with the spike, the high glycemic index foods have a quick spike of sugar and then cause you to crash. The lower glycemic index foods are metabolized more slowly.
Right. So carbs are not all carbs are created equal then. Sorry.
Right.
So some of the carbs are going to have higher glycemic. So you just can't say carbs are carbs. So the article you said was interesting. So white rice, for instance, they said it's like just eating a bowl of sugar, basically.
That's what it said. Yeah, white rice is metabolized very quickly, and it's, so there's complex carbs, I'm sure grasshoppers remember, and then there's simple carbs. And I'm sure actually any of your grasshoppers could probably do a better job of this than I am. But the complex carbs have, they're basically longer and bigger, and they take a longer time to metabolize. And the simple carbs like sugar is just C6H12O6. It's just a tiny little molecule, and it's easy to break up. I think I told you long ago in one of our first shows that cellulose is an isomer of sugar, and that's why we can't digest it. It's just like a flip. The chemical structure of it is still C6H12O6, but it's one little bit of it is a mirror image, and so we don't have the enzyme to break it up.
Right. All right. So say that again then. So just pure sugar goes into your body and converts. Well, it doesn't even have to convert. It's sugar. But say white rice, for example, converts to sugar immediately. Like turns into sugar. Another carb that would be better for, like a sweet potato, let's say. So it takes longer to convert the sugar in that.
Yeah, that may be the article that I sent you from Harvard actually suggested brown rice.
Yes.
And so I have some substitutions here in front of me too. Just before the show, you and I were going through my fridge. So this white bread has 4 grams of sugar in it and 4 grams of protein. And then this whole grain here also has 4 grams of sugar, but 6 grams of protein. And then this one that I like, this is a pumpernickel. Mm-hmm. This has 1 gram of sugar.
Oh, okay.
I really like this because if you throw this, it's dense. You throw it in the toaster, and then I don't know if I mentioned to you before that I lived in Denmark for a year. And I don't know if your viewers can see.
Is there a place you have not lived?
Yes, lots of places. But I had the great opportunity to live there for a year in college. And this is actually what they eat. So it was an open-faced sandwich. They call it smoothbrød. I'm going to say that very badly. Smoothbrød. But so basically you put like a cream cheese or something on the bottom, and then they typically had a meat and a vegetable. And so I kind of cheat. I love mayonnaise, so I will throw a little mayonnaise on the bottom, a little meat, cheese, cucumber.
That is not a good mayonnaise, right? I mean, that's a bad carb right there, isn't it?
Yesterday I did avocado.
Yes, avocado mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I have that. I got that at Costco. I haven't used it yet, but I've got avocado.
Really?
Yeah.
Avocado mayonnaise.
Huh. Avocado mayonnaise. Yeah.
That sounds very, very interesting.
I haven't used mayonnaise.
Substitution.
Right. Okay. Here's one too. Here's one that surprised me here. Corn was a high in the glycemic index, and instead you should have peas or leafy greens. Interesting. I didn't think corn would be like that, but.
Yeah. There's lentils too, was also mentioned as a really good source of complex carbohydrates.
Right. Huh.
Yeah.
So instant oatmeal was high in the glycemic index. Mm-hmm. So we have steel cut oats. Wow.
Steel cut oats. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, if you think about it, the more of the grain that you get, the longer it takes to break it apart. So you're just not getting that instant burst of simple sugar.
So when people, obviously on the label, it doesn't have what the glycemic is. It's just the sugar you're looking for.
It doesn't. And I was thinking it would be really cool if they did that. But I mean, you can look on any website, and there are lots of nutrition websites. The glycemic index is nothing new. People who have diabetes have had to pay attention to it. They've counseled with registered dietitians to maneuver their diet into a more glycemic friendly construction. So they kind of know these substitutions to make already. I'm reminding myself that it makes sense. And interestingly, an article just came out over the weekend in the health research sphere, and I have not read it yet, full disclosure, but it was basically also looking at foods around the world, and regardless of what kind of cuisine you're eating, lower glycemic index foods are better for you as far as cardiovascular health. So it just was an interesting message to resonate. And then another article last week, which again, I have not had time to read yet, was looking at the correlations between national rates of obesity and COVID outcomes. And so it's just something that we need to be paying attention to all around, because unfortunately, many Americans are in a weight category that is not healthy. And we've talked about this before. So just continuing to pay attention to exercise, just moving, that raises your metabolism. Building muscle mass raises your metabolism. Even while you're sitting there, Tom, because you have a lot of muscle mass, you're burning more, right, than you would have been otherwise. So.
Hey, Ali, go back for a second there about the relationship between obesity and COVID. So what was I heard some number, and correct me if I'm wrong, like 90% of the deaths, the COVID deaths, were with people that were overweight, obese. Is that accurate?
I don't know that that's accurate. 40% have been in nursing homes. And as you know, people who have comorbidities, and it could be a wide variety of things. Obesity is just one of them. BMI over 30, BMI over 40. The more overweight you are, the more difficult it is for you to navigate COVID. Unfortunately, then you add weight on top of that, you add cardiovascular concerns on top of that, possibly diabetes. So I don't really want to state a specific percent that we can lay at the doorstep of obesity, but I will say that I do really wonder just what proportion of hospitalizations could be avoided by, you might take a person who's overweight and get them walking and get them increasing lung capacity. I do kind of wonder, like, even if we can't fully address the weight issue, can we address lung capacity, and would that put the person in a better framework to be able to handle a respiratory infection? I do wonder about that too. So I think for anybody listening and anybody struggling with weight, just start moving and you'll start feeling better, and it just cannot hurt.
Yeah. And we've touched on this before too. Like, don't expect that you say to yourself, if you are, I'm going to say 100 pounds overweight, that you're going to lose it all in 1 week. Or you say to yourself, I think a lot of people say, oh, geez, I'm so far gone now, I'm so heavy. But don't look at it that way, right? You just want a healthier lifestyle. For me, I don't even like getting on a scale. It's like I want a healthy lifestyle with my clothes fit, the way I feel about myself when I look in the mirror. And again, you'll get there. It's one step at a time. And it's like that old thing where, you have this daunting problem in front of you. Don't look at the big daunting problem. Don't look at the 100 pounds you got to lose. Just look at, okay, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to cut back on the bad foods. You and I know we've touched on this before, but this is a pet peeve of mine. I mean, we don't allow cigarette commercials on TV anymore because cigarettes can kill people, right? It leads to all the stuff it leads to. So that's, we acknowledge that. But then we allow all these commercials for all these bad foods we eat. I hate to pick on like the fast food restaurants and everything, because now they have some healthier foods there. But, we have all these restaurants that serve these bad foods and everything. It's like, it causes people to be overweight and unhealthy. It's the same thing to me. I don't know why we just look at food differently, right? We look at food, and again, we've touched on this. We're looking at food now as a source of comfort and joy, where it should be a source of nourishment. I mean, you can still have food that you enjoy eating, but it's for nourishment. It's not for.
Yeah, but you busted on me for my apple pie issues last week. I will say that there are certain foods that I think are okay to be a source of comfort and joy. But I also think that you shouldn't go crazy and, eat half of the apple pie. And I also think that it would be good to encourage yourself to earn it a little bit. You don't have to be totally like me and live your life in ledgers and strict earnings. But I do think that if you have a reward set up for yourself, that's a good thing. You walk your page, you get your pie.
Just a little pointer here. There is nobody like you. Okay. So let's not. Don't worry about that.
Thank goodness, right? But it's interesting, Tom, because every time we talk, I reflect on what I said, and then I watch myself, and I'm horrified by watching myself again. But I do want to know, I want your listeners to know that I think the primary thing that supports a healthy lifestyle is taking care of yourself, your body, as best as you possibly can. And like you said, not focusing on the weight, not focusing on, how you look and things like that. Just focus on taking good care of yourself and believing that your body was built to perform well. And all you have to do is a few little things to take care of it. And you're going to be better prepared to fight off infection. You're going to live a longer and healthier life. So just take care of it.
But again, one step at a time with that. It's going to evolve over time. My healthy lifestyle has evolved a lot. Like, I look back, even at the start of the pandemic, how much I've learned, and I'm fasting now, like we talk about all the time. And, my diet's so much better. And I've just learned to, I don't hardly have any prepared foods that I buy. It's all stuff that I make here, or soups and all this kind of stuff. So, and that didn't happen overnight. That's just evolved. I experimented with foods, and the whole meal prep and everything too. Because, a lot of people are still busy and they're out going to work or whatever. And so if you prepare properly, you can still, and like we've talked about it, we can buy the healthy foods at a cheaper price and be healthy.
And build new habits. Like a lot of it is just building new habits. Honestly, we haven't had, I keep coming back to the Cheez-Its just because it's a simple and funny little thing to poke at me, but we haven't actually had Cheez-Its in the house for about 6 weeks. And you know what? I was thinking about it the other day. I actually don't really crave them. I walked by them in the gas station. Normally I would buy a bag of them and just chomp them in the car. I haven't. So I think it might take, for things you really, really love, it might take up to 6 weeks to extinguish the.
Well, yeah, and learn to replace them with something else. Like I've got into the cucumbers, and I make my own hummus now. So when you make your own hummus, it really isn't a big deal. Like the tahini is the main, well, not the main ingredient, but it's one of the ingredients. But that's just basically sesame seeds and oil. So you can get a food processor. You can make your own tahini. It's chickpeas, and in whatever way you want to season it up. If you want it hotter or spicy or whatever, you season it the way you want. So you make it at home. It's pretty healthy. So it's like, instead of having chips, I really like cucumbers and hummus now. So I've basically replaced that with something that I should be eating. So yeah.
It's good. And you know what else? Like that sensation of it being cold will actually fill you up more. I don't know if you noticed that. I mean, I could eat like 5 times the number of chips and finally feel full versus, cucumbers and hummus. So,
I was speaking to somebody that was Chinese the other day. They're really big on drinking hot water. Like they just drink hot water. And I think they believe it's really healthy, right? Do you believe that?
My kendo sensei used to tell me that after practice, he would basically say, we would just be incredibly, incredibly hot in the dojo. And then we'd hit the konbini, the 7-Eleven afterwards. And all of us would just kind of end up there and get a little something for after. And I would often go for like sparkling water or something like that. And he's like, no, dame, drink something hot. And I didn't really understand that. But his feeling is that it's not a shock to the body. If your body's already hot, then you want to soothe it by drinking something that's closer to your core temperature instead of this incredible switch.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, but I think they also believe just like for your immune system and too. I guess I just kind of joked around when you wash your dishes in cold water. So I guess the inside of your body's cleaner because you wash your dishes in hot water. So.
I was like, maybe you do.
Yeah. Well,
it's the Dom way. Cold water.
Yeah.
Showers in cold water too.
I'm a guy. I'm lucky if I use water at all to wash the dish.
I get in a lot of trouble here because I always use hot water and I always leave it on hot. And my kids come by and their little hands are more sensitive than my old hands. They're like, Mom, why is water so hot again?
Right. Yeah, so how are we doing the country? How's the country doing with the vaccine getting rolled out?
Good question. I'm glad you asked about that because I wanted to mention that I was listening to a clinical update just before getting on with you. And I do have some pandemic related frustrations of my own about the word getting out to all of our doctors and all of our Americans who are taking care of people who are at high risk for COVID. There are still COVID floating around there and there's still people who have not gotten the vaccine yet. So I'm going to put in one plug that maybe you can put in the show notes again, but Daniel Griffin does a 30-minute clinical update every week where he takes the latest published peer-reviewed studies and best practice recommendations for treating COVID, and he puts them out there in a very quick blurb. So it's something that anybody who is science-minded, health-minded, nurses, anybody who would like to become better informed, I highly recommend it. I will put in a plug for monoclonals. Those are the synthetic antibodies, and those are best done in the first week of illness for anyone who's at high risk. So please listen to that COVID clinical update. If you know anybody who's infected, just make sure that you're able to advocate and ask for it. The other thing I would say is that the vaccines are rolling out, and in Virginia, it's vaccinate.virginia that you can go to, and you basically in your own state, it's rolling out state by state. So you basically have to just research in your own state and figure out how the registries are being constructed. And then I have gone on the list and fallen off the list twice here in Virginia. So it takes some diligence to make sure that you're on the list and that you stay on the list. But
okay, so here's the question for you. So naively, I just thought I should have known this. So the vaccine does not stop you from getting the virus. It helps you fight the virus off if you get it, correct?
Right. You ask really good questions, Tom. And basically that's one that there's really still collecting data on. So there are two things. So you asked about stopping you from getting infection. That would be called sterilizing immunity. So that you build up enough immunity that if you are exposed to COVID, it doesn't even get into your cells. So that would be very rare. But they do believe that it is stopping the transmission of infection. So it might get into you, but maybe not transmit to the next person. I was just listening this morning that it's looking like maybe 74%.
Hold on, let me interrupt you, Ali. Let me touch on something. So you're saying that if you get the vaccine, you can't transmit it to somebody else if you get the virus?
Not necessarily. They're still studying that, okay? So what they do know for sure right now, as for sure as anything gets in science, and I mentioned this before, there's always exceptions and there's always p-values and distribution curves. But the vaccine is looking like any of the three that we have available right now are preventing death and hospitalization 100%. So that is fabulous. Anybody who's at high risk, and that's people over 65, and then the people younger than 65 who we were just talking about, who have pregnancy even, obesity, and diabetes, cardiovascular disease. The list is pretty long. There's a lot of people who are eligible for a vaccine age 64 and under, and should really look into getting it. So the vaccines prevent hospitalization, severe illness, and death 100%. The mRNA vaccines are preventing symptomatic COVID, and that's any symptom of COVID, around 94, 95%. The one-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine is preventing that less, but it's actually still, because it was tested in the middle of massive pandemic and in countries where only 40% of the participants were here in the US, 46% maybe, but others were in South Africa, where 95% of all of those sampled cases were the B.1.351 variant that is more transmissible. And so the J&J vaccine went through trial by fire. And Daniel Griffin, the clinician that I just said does the weekly update, he said basically it was up against the A-team and it did really well. You would understand the A-team. It was up against like a very difficult pandemic scenario in which we had more variants floating around than the mRNA vaccines went through. And so it's still preventing hospitalization and serious disease. So that's really the takeaway. And it's looking like a little less reactogenicity, and it's one dose. And I forgot to mention this to your listeners last week, but there's actually an Ebola outbreak going on right now. And the platform that the J&J, the one-dose vaccine that I just mentioned, is built on is the AD26, adenovirus 26 platform, which is actually dose 1 of the Ebola vaccine, same platform. Ebola vaccine requires 2 doses. So Johnson & Johnson has experience with this particular platform in nearly 200,000 people already. So safe and effective vaccine. Go grab it if you can.
So the Ebola outbreak, is that here in the U.S.?
No. That's in Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire. And but unfortunately, last I checked, there were like 11 cases and 4 deaths already. But back in 2014, between 2014 and 2018, was one of the biggest Ebola outbreaks. And that's what prompted J&J to go and build this vaccine. And that was just approved by the European Union last summer in July. So interestingly enough, it's the same platform. And so they stuck the COVID vector into the very same platform that they'd already been trying for Ebola. And here we have one dose.
Oh, very interesting. And the rate of the vaccine getting out there, I know we talked, I think it was at the Super Bowl, Biden was interviewed, and there's a quote, I think that at the rate it was getting out now, it would be like take 6 years or whatever to get out to 75% of the people. Is that picked up now?
I think we're close to 2 million, and somebody was saying, we need to get up to 3 million a day. So the last I heard, we were looking at anybody who wants it can get it in May or June.
Okay. And we're now, like with sporting events, for instance, here in New York, they're allowing, I think it's 10%
right.
People in. Is that too early to be starting to do that, or do you think that's the right thing to do?
It's interesting. The Texas hit the news too, right? Was saying that, we're relaxing our mask mandate. But interestingly enough, I was just listening to some discussion about this on This Week in Virology, the other podcast that I really like with the 5 virologists. And they were, one of them lives in Texas. And so he was giving his take on it, having, living there personally in Texas and being a virologist. And he said that basically the governor is like, look, you all know the deal. We're a year into this pandemic. If you need to wear a mask, if you're high risk or not. And individual restaurants can decide if they're going to implement a mask mandate or not. So I think we're in this very difficult transition time where there's going to be a lot of writhing and squirming and frustration. And I was thinking, have you ever watched a caterpillar go into its chrysalis and then reemerge? I remember being fascinated by the monarch when our kids were little.
No, I didn't do that.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of writhing and squirming. When the caterpillar is building its chrysalis, it is like twitching and writhing, and like finally it relents and it's in the chrysalis and it's still, right? And then there's a lot of writhing when it comes back out. So I feel like on both ends of this pandemic, there's just such a lot of writhing around the policies and things. But ultimately, we've been doing this for a year, right? We know that there are now 3 vaccines out. We know how to protect ourselves with not getting into dense, crowded places. We need good ventilation. We need to be careful of close conversation with people who are unvaccinated and potentially able to transmit COVID. And we know who's at risk. So we just need to be smart. And we don't, the Texas basically said, you don't need a governor or the government telling you how to be smart.
Well, that I do buy that. I think that's, because our economy is going to, if we don't open up, then the economy's, the danger of the other side effects of the closing everything down is
right. There's a lot of collaterals. But that said, you asked me about 10%, you asked me about capacity and things like that. So this is something that I kind of live and breathe in our own hockey rink, right? It is difficult to manage capacity, and it's difficult in some places to manage ventilation. And so you really have to try to set up scenarios that promote the best possible outcome for people. And so 10% doesn't sound like it's overcrowded, but if they put all 10% in the same tiny area, or they were all waiting in the same place to, present tickets, it could go badly still. So, I actually heard of some vaccination clinics where people are being crammed into a gym and their only source of exposure to COVID was waiting for their vaccine. So, it's just, we all have to take a lot of responsibility if we're managing, an athletic event or some kind of school event or even a vaccine clinic. We have to be really careful and mindful of logistics.
So you can't just say, okay, now open up the schools, let the kids back in. Okay, that's nice to say that, but okay, how are you going to do that? How are you going to keep the kids safe, right?
Right, and the teachers safe, right?
Yes.
And so, there's a lot of things that smart epidemiologists know how to do, and they're kind of been, trying to propose from the sidelines on Twitter, and I've been following that dialogue back and forth quite a bit. There's some really great people out there who are proposing ways to do this. There are studies out there showing that it can be done, studies from Wisconsin. But it's just goes back to the same thing. You need to cohort people so that you can do contact tracing easily, meaning keeping kids together. You need to promote mask wearing when they're outside. If they're in the same cohort, maybe they don't need to wear a mask. So you need to just find ways to make it possible for the kids to be as adherent as they can.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So one more time, then your website again is
abcmedicalwriting.com.
Definitely. Okay. And you're going to do this, you're helping kids write better. Is that what you're doing? Are you doing that this weekend?
What I was thinking I would do, and I've done this with other people, it's basically a pre-write. And so you hop on, and I can maybe take two people at a time. So I would work with one and then work with the other, and we just go back and forth. But it would be basically through like a Zoom. I have a link. I use it Microsoft Teams, but it would be through that. And so it'd be a study hall. And you pop in, you give me your DBQ, your document-based question, your essay prompt, and we do a little bit of thought mapping and get you writing. And then you take 20 minutes to write. I go to the next person. I get them going. They write, and then I come back and I look at what you wrote, and I give you some suggestions for how to reorganize or how to do better transitions between paragraphs, how to keep your tense the same. Just make it more fun and get it done.
That's fantastic. Great job by you. And I'll do a Zoom class on bowling too. Maybe I'll have a bowling class. I'll take two at a time. Teach you how to bowl. So.
I'm still working on pull-ups. I'm still very angry.
Where you at? How many you got? How many?
I'm up to 3, and I tried band assisted, but I need a stronger band.
Yeah. Okay. So you get 3 now with the bands, or 3 by yourself?
No, 3. Well, do you count jumping up and then pulling the last few inches? Does that count?
Well, if you wanted to, Allie, you can. Yes. But you're getting 3 unassisted pull-ups right now.
Yes, and I will say I'm using hands like this. I can't do this.
That doesn't matter. You do it either way. But that's good. You started off not being able to do one at all, right? Right.
And what about like a flexed arm hang? Do you count that as? I know the Marines do that. Flexed arm hang, where you just kind of hang there, chin above the bar, as long as you can.
Listen, that's still the bottom line is, if you want to get stronger, you know how it works. You got to break down the muscle tissue, and the muscle builds back up again, and it builds stronger. So if you're doing just hanging there, you're putting stress on your arms or your muscles. So good.
I was at a physical therapist this week, and she was actually talking about a trapezius not fully engaging. So it's interesting. You can actually use biofeedback to force your muscles to fire. Have you ever done that with yourself?
Biofeedback. Well, I know that I feel like now, like I call it putting my mind in the muscle. So if I like really concentrating on the muscle that I'm trying to work out, and I really so if I'm doing a bicep curl or whatever, like I've really trained myself a lot to just like I'm concentrating totally on that bicep, especially when I'm on the Bosu ball. So now I'm having to totally focus. I've got to tighten up my core. So there's no looking around at the TV or whatever. It's like focus on the muscle that you're working. So
are you still yelling, Ito?
Yes, I am actually too. Yeah. Feels good too. Unbelievable. It does get me fired up. It's like,
good.
I'll be at the end of an exercise. I got to squeeze out one more rep or whatever. Go, Ito!
I have a new one for you. I have one for you, okay?
Yeah.
Ishokenmei.
Ishokenmei?
Ishokenmei. I checked with my Japanese friends to be sure that this was a good one. I was a little annoyed at son number 1 this weekend, and so I wrote it on his water bottle. It was just a weird way for me to just get rid of some frustration. So I put Ishokenme on his water bottle. It really means like bear down, like do as best as you can. I'm committing to do as good as I can. And guess what? He scored 2 goals in the first period.
Ishokenme.
Yeah. You know what he told his friend that it means?
What's that?
He told his friend said, so what does that mean, Sam? There's kanji on your water bottle. And he's like, yeah, my mom was really annoyed at me.
So just to be clear with Ito, it means intention, correct?
Yeah, it does. It does. But we need to talk to my Japanese friend on, I believe, this Friday, Tom, at 8 a.m. our time, if you're free. Yeah. 10 p.m. in Japan, 9 p.m. in Hong Kong.
Okay, perfect.
We will have somebody to answer these questions. Very good friend of mine.
Because I'd like to be able to say Ito. It just feels good when I'm saying like Ito. It's short. It's like Ito.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's good. And I'm not sure the Japanese men actually say anything in the gym, Tom.
Yeah.
But we'll have to ask Kenji. He is a very good friend of mine. I hope your grasshoppers join us.
Yeah,
he's been a good buddy, a good adventurer, and a fellow mischief maker. Yeah. We have a funny story to share. And he will also be able to tell you a little bit about hockey in Asia.
Perfect. I like it. Excellent. All right, Allie. Good to see you. We'll see you again next week. Oh, actually, we'll see you on Friday morning then. That's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom.
See you, buddy.